Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Topbin90 Podcast. It has been a while, but today we are coming to you hot and heavy. A lot of transfer news, a lot of things going on at Charlotte FC. I've got Brian on my left today. You know, we're switching it up a little bit today. Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing well. One time, and again, like I leave town and fireworks start to land in Charlotte FC, right? I mean, that's just how it kind of goes. Went on a golf trip, they start making moves.
Yeah, between you and Tom, bro.
Yeah.
Every time y'all take a little break, it just all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. I need to set up a GoFundMe, right? Like golfing and camping, and then every time I leave town, things will happen in Charlotte.
Nice, awesome. And then we have my man Sean back again. How are you?
Married this time. I got jewelry.
Hey.
Nice.
I told you I wouldn't come back till after I got it.
Yeah. Congrats. How's married life treating you?
It's good, man. It's the main difference is jewelry.
Love it. Well, let's get into it today. A couple of topics that we're going to talk about. Obviously, all the incoming transfers. Tim Ream, you've got Calvin Stengs, you've got potentially Miguel Almirón, Idan Toklomati. Obviously, we're also going to see a little bit of some of the departures. I want you guys to rate this transfer window for Charlotte. Also, I want to know how high should our expectations be for this rest of the season, given everything that's going on. And we also got two really good subscriber questions. One is, what is the state of our depth chart and roster designations with all these players that are being added? That one's from John. And the second one is from Evan. What players benefit the most and what players are going to make way with the new signings? So let's get into it a little bit. I kind of want to start off, let's start with the departures first, right? We've got, obviously, we broke last week that Brecht de Jager was headed out of Charlotte. Looks like he's going to sign for his boyhood club in Belgium, right? Okay. And so was wearing the 10. We've had a history of not hitting 10s.
Yep.
So his departure, obviously we've already seen Scott Arfield leave the club, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, Brecht, who was on $1 million, right? Scott Arfield, who was on, I think, $450K, right?
Yep.
Per MLSPA, right? So talk to me, I guess I'll start off with you, Brian, about these departures at Charlotte FC.
Yeah, and then we also got to add Hamadi Diop. Obviously, he's on a loan, but I mean, he frees up an international spot as well. So you have kind of these three main moves that kind of make kind of these other, both potential moves and locked-in moves happen. I'd say I feel like that's the one downside to kind of like being late in the window is sometimes some of these moves seem a little bit rushed at times, and Diakite seems like maybe one of those moves. Arfield maybe as well. Just kind of, I guess they said the strategy was bring in some veteran leadership, and sometimes that hits with Westwood. That's that hits, but it doesn't always hit. And that they were 1 for 3 in terms of like bringing in like kind of the older midfielder who can kind of help lead this team, and those other two guys just really. It seemed like for me, Arfield kind of lost his legs a bit, especially from preseason really on. It just didn't seem like he kind of had the legs for it, especially from the starting role.
For sure.
And Diakite I feel like after that miss he had was just like, I mean, I didn't seem like he ever really recovered from that. I'd imagine that was a big aspect of losing trust.
And we truly couldn't find a good position, to play him. Was he a midfielder?
Yeah.
When he came in under Latanza, he was thrown in the wings. We've seen him play right left wing as well with Dean Smith, and it just feels like Sean, he never kind of, one, didn't live up to expectations, and two, he was never comfortable in any position at Charlotte.
Yeah, I wanted him to be good so bad. That's all I wanted. I thought I like this play style. You watch, you get excited when a player comes in, you go watch their videos, how they've done on other teams. And you saw a lot of flashes of excellence there, and I'm like, cool, he's going to come in, he's going to rub off on people, he's going to set up all these goals. I think he was always one step short. I think his last win wasn't going to be in Charlotte. I think he'll go back home and do really well.
Yeah, and to talk about the Topbin90 curse.
I was about to bring it up.
Lee had freaking Enzo Copetti as his player of the season. Gone. I had Brecht de Jager. Gone. Who'd you have?
Ashley Westwood. Bam, bam.
You hit with that. Nice. So, I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, we free up an international roster slot too with Hamadi. Totally missed it. Good catch, right? I mean, we're freeing up a lot of space in this roster. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of those incoming transfers. First, I want to talk about Tim Ream, right? Because Tim Ream, 36-year-old defender, he's left-footed, which Dean Smith mentioned he wanted, right? right at the beginning of the season. Veteran experience, can play you out the back. What do you make of this signing, Sean?
Well, you want to replace some of that leadership that's coming out the door. You just did it in the best way possible. He's going to make our distribution out of the back better. He's so calm with the ball at his feet. You know, I'm not one for replacing something that's not broken. I think our defense is great.
Yeah.
But I think the team saw and correctly adjusted to find a player who can really push us over that level.
Nice. How much do you think a signing like this either hinders a guy like Privet? Because my understanding is that, you know, Tim Ream's going to play next to Malanda. Like,
Yeah.
He has to, right? I mean, at this point, if you're coming this late in your career where you could potentially still stay at Fulham, right, and fight for a starting spot, you're going to come to MLS and you're expecting to start.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely seems like he's going to probably eat up some of those minutes. I mean, but Dean has also, like, really preached competition, right? I mean, Ajiman looked like he was capable of keeping a starting role. He already knocked Capetti out of a role, essentially, and right, that's why that move happens.
Right.
But at the same time, he doesn't want them to just earn that move out or earn that spot outright and not have anybody else pushing them. So a Ream move, you know, pushes Privet in the short term, establishes that there's a level that needs to be reached, you know, to continue pushing, you know, and I'd say there was really no competition behind him at this point. I mean, Hamadi Diop clearly wasn't, you know, meeting that expectation.
Yeah, Toloma
Neely wasn't allowed to get, you know, brought up because he was an extra player, so he had to stay at Crown Legacy, and he hasn't hit that level either. He's still kind of missing minutes at Crown Legacy. Tuiloma hasn't really, you know, met expectations, so there really wasn't another player there to push him. And even if Privet had gotten hurt, now what do you know, you're kind of in a struggling position. So not only does Ream probably take a starting role, you actually have depth at both spots, where I guess Tuiloma, who has shown up at times, you know, in those spot starts, can replace Malanda. Privet likely would replace Ream in that setup. So you kind of have locked down just a starter and a backup at both positions, which seems also to be kind of Dean's liking. He likes to have a backup replacement at each spot, and that's kind of what that fills as well.
For sure. And this, from my understanding, was an opportunity signing for Charlotte FC.
Yeah.
If you've seen some of Tim Ream's recent interviews, he talked about that. You know, him and his wife sat down at the end of last season with Fulham and kind of decided, what do we want to do next? Do we want to stay at Fulham, continue, see this contract out, or do we want to try something new? Right? And so Charlotte saw an opportunity, right? And when you can get the starting center back for the U.S. men's national team in this roster, you're going to take that, right?
100%. And so, I think he's a world-class player. Like I would say at that level, like he's one of the few world-class, like true world-class players in terms of just consistency and finding a position from the U.S. men's national team player pool. Like all the other guys have kind of been bounced around. Yeah. Even the really high-level prospects like Pulisic and Gio Reyna, they kind of get bounced around, haven't really slotted in. Pulisic seems like he's gotten there, but with AC Milan. But it does, like, Ream is one of the few that has really locked down a role at a big-time club. Yeah. And and so, I mean, to bring that kind of player in, it levels up their overall expectations in terms of just what future moves can look like as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about, that leveling up, Sean. I mean, we've seen a backline this season that has played really well. You know, multiple clean sheets, and when you add a guy like Tim, right now you've got two high-quality center backs, two high-quality fullbacks, you know, a goalkeeper who's been phenomenal in Kalina. How excited does having a backline like this, like, I guess, increase expectations?
I mean, to me, we should be playing at our best level. I mean, it's going to take a minute for everyone to get adjusted to the MLS. It always does. But you just added, you know, we have veteran leadership in the midfield for sure. We didn't have veteran leadership in our defense that was starting. Now we've got a veteran who's starting in the middle, who's going to be able to really help command that area, help Kalina out in those times when he's maybe not commanding it totally himself. I mean, I think that we have a puzzle piece as a team, and we're just finding all those little pieces left over to make a good run here.
And now what it also does is it sets up the future as well. So, I mean, here's the thing. Like, the chance that Malanda stays long-term, I would imagine. I mean, he signed a new contract, but at the same time, that new contract makes his value go up, right? So there's the benefit of that for Charlotte FC. The chance that he doesn't start getting offers, like teams don't start giving Charlotte FC offers for him, I feel like is low. He's going to start getting some offers in, especially coming the winter when teams are looking for a replacement throughout the middle of the season. And they could easily get a big enough offer to where a big enough club where Malanda is going to be like, want to take it as well, right? So that opportunity is on the table, and you have to have an immediate solution, right? That's what the good teams in MLS do. FC Cincinnati, They have the replacement set up for Brenner when that move happened, right? They have kind of like the next option, the next play already set up so that when that move comes, your team is prepared for it. And I think that's also what Ream does, is it kind of helps set up that situation, that back line, to make up for that change when it comes. Because I would bet on Malanda getting offers, and it's just a matter of whether or not it's the offer that he wants.
And Malanda's not mistake-free either. Tim Ream is amazing with his positioning.
Yep.
He's incredible in terms of being in the right place at the right time. So I think that with that in place, we're going to be able to have a good guy to cover up any of the mistakes that are made there. He's going to look even better.
Yeah. Awesome. So obviously Tim Ream. Now let's talk about the big one, right? I think it was the Telegraph that reported first that Calvin Stengs was in advanced negotiations with Charlotte. From our understanding, today is Monday. His medical is done. The contract is there, right? I didn't get a wind of the player, right? I'm not gonna lie to anyone, but from people that I talked to last week, they all seem very excited. Yeah. And now I know exactly why, right? Obviously, we're getting a 25-year-old, right, who plays in one of the top teams in the Netherlands, in Feyenoord, right? I think last season he had 43 matches, 8 goals, 18 assists, so this is a very, very exciting signing, right? Like, I can't stress that enough, right? Because we're getting a player, one, in their prime, two, who also had a great season, right? So it's not like last year, there's a big difference between getting Brecht on a free and paying $8 million for a guy like Calvin Stengs, right? So talk to me about a player like this, Brian.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say right out of the gate, I mean, key passes, progressive passing, final third, just being able to create those moments for the other players around him. I think that's what Charlotte have been missing more than anything. I mean, we've been screaming for like that true creative player, that player who makes the rest of the team better.
Since the beginning of time.
Every window it's come up, and every window, it just hasn't really, been resolved until now, right? So I think this moment was huge for this front office, because after getting sort of like continuing to say like, hey, we need to find the right coach to make this happen, we have made the right moves, right? And that kind of being up for debate based on our previous shows and conversations, like what has to change to make this team better. Dean Smith came in and kind of proved that some of their players, their signings, their under the radar signings, were good enough to get this team to another level. Dean Smith obviously showed that being the right coach can make that happen. But at the same time, it's up to the front office to then level them up even
100%.
further. And so that's, I think, what this move kind of shows, is the front office was able to answer the call at the time. We're like, if they don't make this kind of signing, the scope and everything is focused on them, because Dean Smith showed that they could take the team up to another level.
100%.
The front office has to show that they can take it to that next level.
Yeah,
and so that's what this move shows, that they're capable of kind of putting that step forward.
I think this move also shows a little bit that Dean Smith has an effect on people coming to Charlotte.
Yeah.
I don't think we're not getting players like this the last few transfer windows. Now we've got guys who want to come play. Like, you played for Arne Slot. He played for what's going to be the best Premier League coach of all time.
Of course.
I'll catch slack for that, but it's okay. No, I think that when you have a coach like that, and you can pitch that quality, and look what we're doing, look what you can help make.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, Zoran, if you watch this, you're more than welcome to come talk. You're more than welcome to come on this pod. Let's talk some of these transfers, right? Because they've really been hitting. Like, one thing that you can always tell is like the mood of the fan base when a player of theirs is about to leave. And from what I saw, a lot of Feyenoord fans were not happy to see this guy leave, right? And so to me, this was a player that a month ago he was linked with Lazio, right? Like, that's the type of move I was expecting for him. Maybe a team in the between 8 and 12 in the Premier League, right? And for Charlotte FC to sign a player like this with the technical ability, right? He's going to make everybody around him better. That's what we need. Anytime that we're looking to sign players, like especially in a squad that Dean Smith has built so far, they have to come in and immediately make an impact. And a signing like Tim Ream does that. A signing like Calvin Stengs does that. So the excitement level for me has gone up, right? And to me, this potentially is the best player that we've ever have signed for Charlotte FC. Right? So I kind of want you guys to talk about that. Is there a bigger name, maybe not name-wise, but a bigger talent that you feel like has come to this club outside of a guy like Calvin that's about to be signed?
No, in terms of resume, he's definitely got the best resume. I mean, Karol Swiderski had double-digit goal seasons, but it was kind of at the same bar that he's kind of continued to set here. It's kind of maintained. I think what we've seen from Stengs' resume, at least this last season, is that he has an extra level, right? The fact, like you said, 18 assists. Yeah. That's, and he had 26 goal contributions in the season. I mean, that's double what Karol Swiderski has done in most of his career, except for that his last season with Charlotte FC.
And this guy's got called up to the Dutch national team as well, right? I mean, like that's a pretty big, making the Dutch team is not easy. And in his last match, he had a hat trick, right? Yep. So I think that also speaks to, how this front office is able to pull a move like that. Because a player at 25, I don't think is looking at MLS. Like if they want to continue being part of the Dutch national team, going to that next level, right? And for them to convince him to come here, that's major props.
I still can't believe we did it, dude.
But hopefully he signed, so everything's there, right?
Everything's there. Get him here, and I'll believe a little bit more. But in terms of impact, Ashley Westwood, as we talked about, as his club's marquee signing, he has changed the culture. He has, on the field is the biggest leader. He's all over. I mean, you guys were talking about in the last pod how he's watching film with 17 and 15, the U15s, making stuff happen. Like in terms of impact, the potential here is way greater with Stengs. Yeah. But Ashley is, the club's first legend, and I think that when you move forward, we have a second one coming in.
Yeah, I mean, and not only that, but let's not forget also Idan Toklomati coming in as well, right? 19-year-old. I think they're going to pay roughly around 3.5 mil for him. It's another forward, right? Can play at the 9. Looks more like a winger to me, right? But I mean, it's good like May of this year when we let Enzo Copetti go. This is a couple months ago. Yeah. We only had Patrick Ajiman at the 9. We had Abada injured. So we were running with like virtually no DPs and a draft pick up top. To fast forward now, the moves that we're making, the players that have signed, the links that we've had, right? I mean, night and day. Talk to me a little bit about Idan.
Yeah, well, I think it's just another big potential signing, right? I mean, you're betting on potential. We'll see where things are at, and then I wouldn't, guess that he's going to make a huge impact this season. They've only got 9 games left, right, before the playoffs. So I'm looking to him as a next year kind of player, similar to sort of like what we see from Petkovic a little bit. It seems like he's going to maybe even take him another year. That's not uncommon for U22s. If you look at a lot of the top U22s in MLS, like Mateusz Bogusz, took him like an entire season. Now he's got like 20 goal contributions. Carlos Gomez at RSL, another example. He's got like 13 goals right now. Took him an entire year in MLS before he got to this point now, right? They had to kind of finish building the team around them and give them that time to kind of get up to speed, because that's just part of the game when you're a pro. I feel like that's one of the downsides to Petkovic playing at Crown Legacy for an entire year. It's a slower game, younger kids playing there. It's taken him some time. Clearly, it's like he hasn't really fit into the squad yet, and so that's what we're gonna have to see from Idan. It's all about potential. How fast can he get up to speed with this league? And really, I mean, there's going to be times likely when he flashes, like what Petkovic did. He flashed some of his potential.
The goal he scored.
The goal he scored. Some of the passes he can make. But at the same time, like the overall consistency isn't there because the gameplay hasn't gotten there. His processing speed hasn't gotten there.
And this is not typical for me, but from what I've seen, like Charlotte loves to scout in these emerging markets. And so like they're not always going to hit the championship, Prem, top 5 leagues, but they want to look at the leagues like the Israeli league, right? Leagues that maybe like a lot of people don't pay attention to, but you can find a diamond in the rough, and hopefully Idan is a guy like that. I mean, one thing that sticks to me right off the bat is now we have more competition, We got more competition on the wings, an alternative to Vargas and Yuri Tavares, but also he could play the striker, right? That's more competition for Karol and Pat.
Yeah, I think overall, we're filling in a roster where there's not a lot of holes. There's not, if someone goes out, we're not screwed. And in terms of previous seasons where we lost a guy and it was just like, well, maybe next season. Like it's not going to be that way anymore. And am I wrong? Is he from the same farm system as Abada? Like grew up in the same system of teams?
I'm not sure about that. I do know, they were both together in the Israeli Olympic team, right? So, I mean, they do have that.
No, I do actually want to point out. So you mentioned competition for Vargas, Tavares, and Carroll and Ajimon. I actually think potentially, ideally, he also could present some competition for Abada on the right wing. I don't feel like Charlotte have that competition on the right wing. Vargas doesn't seem like his strongest position. Yuri Tavares has never been really allowed to play so far on the right. It seems like his strongest position is by far the left side as well. So if Idan can be sort of a right wing fill-in, that maybe also could be where he slots in with some competition, because it doesn't seem like there is an alternative, like a strong alternative on the right to replace Abada.
There was quote unquote Brecht, right, who was kind of giving that competition.
Yeah, or Vargas, but you can feel like there's a downgrade from
100%.
the way Vargas is on the right versus how he plays on the left. It just, I mean, as much as Dean said early on he likes him on the right, I feel like, you know, hogwash.
Good old hogwash.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then, just to add to more of the excitement of everything that's going on, our boy Fabrizio Romano dropped that Charlotte are in for Miguel Almirón, you know, MLS Cup champion, captain of the Paraguayan team, 30 years old, right? Former Atlanta United player as well, which should sting a little bit more, you know, for the United fans, Atlanta United fans, right? You know, and so, which, I mean, that's just overall excitement. Like, from what I've seen the last 6 months, these are the type of links I love seeing Charlotte. The Marco Royce, the Almirons, right? The Jamie Vardys, right, of the world. Like, these are players that can come in and make a significant impact from the get-go.
World class.
Sean, talk to me about a link like Miguel Almirón.
I didn't believe it when I saw it.
Even from Fabrizio, dude?
Maybe I just didn't believe what happened, right? He's class, dude. You remember, you watched him, you know, we didn't have soccer in Charlotte when he was a stud. And so you watched him just be Atlanta United. He was the heartbeat of that team. He won them that cup. And so when you hear that name and like rumors are coming back and playing for their rival and giving us a chance, and within a year when I think we can compete and we should host a playoff game with the roster we put together, like that was one where I was like, oh, we really going for it. We're throwing everything at the wall. And I love to see that from our front office. I love to see the efforts being put in, the time being spent, and finding players that want to come to Charlotte and you know, make an impact here, or would be an impact here.
Nice. Brian, talk to me a little bit about, obviously, logistically, how could this even happen, right? You know, Miguel Almirón isn't going to come here in a TAM deal, right? You know, I mean, he's got to come and be a DP for Charlotte FC. Right, but if we're counting, right, good old MLS roster rules, right, preventing teams from, you know, being more competitive. But what would we have to see to even potentially see Miguel Almirón play for Charlotte FC? Yeah,
well, based on reports, I mean, if the fee required to get Almirón is around $20 million, which is that's what's been reported as we've seen, because he's not on a free, right? So if you're gonna get him, I mean, that's 2 transfer fees that will like eliminate the possibility of a DP or a TAM designation. They have to be a DP designation. So that means, I mean, Carroll or Abada would have to go, and then the chance of Abada being the one that's gone would be pretty ridiculous at this point, because it's like the first Dean Smith signing. So it would have to be Carroll at that point, right? That's the only real solution to make that happen. So it would have to be Miguel Almirón would come in, and Carroll would have to, they had to be gone. So it would have to happen within like days. We're talking, I mean, Carroll technically, they could take longer to sell him, but you only have 3 days to sign Almirón. So it all has to happen by the 14th. So it would have to happen fast. It would have to be just a lot of things would have to work quickly. You have to deal with a lot of like paperwork on the back end, which oftentimes takes time, and you deal with a situation like what happened with McGuire and Blackburn when the guy doesn't click send on the submit,
or the De Gea
transfer.
printer,
So,
you know,
yeah, exactly.
like
Things
a decade ago,
right? So you have to have a lot of things click and work to make it happen, and there's a lot of risk involved, because if something happens on the Karol Swiderski sale, and then you have Almirón come in and everything's not done, then you're stuck with 4 DPs, and that's an issue because you have to announce on the 14th how you're building your roster. So that's another new thing that came about with MLS because of the new roster rules, where you can pick 2 DPs and 4 U22s, or 3 and 3.
Yep.
You have to announce it on the 14th what you're doing, and with that comes, like, if you have 4 DPs, you're going to be in real trouble.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you know, like, my understanding of this situation, right, to burst everybody's bubble, of course, is, you know, they sounded out Miguel Almirón a while back, you know, and apparently, you know, I think this is more of Zoran seeing an opportunity I'm in London, I'm negotiating Calvin, right?
Yep.
Is there anything I can do to make Almiron happen? My understanding of that situation is Almiron is seeing MLS kind of as his last option, right? Like it's not really like a move that he wants to make just yet, right?
Yep.
Obviously he's third. He's playing for a team like Newcastle.
Yeah.
I would think he would want to stay in the Premier League, right? Or, he also had an offer from a Saudi club. But I don't think an MLS move, from what I'm hearing, is what he wants right now. It's an option, but it's not what he's looking to do right now. Obviously, I don't know if Zorn has some sort of magic wand, to make this happen, right? We'll all be extremely happy. Yeah. But the likelihood of this happen, I'd give it 5, maybe 10%. At best,
Look, and this one isn't on necessarily the front office,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
This situation is more on how the transfer windows are set up, because MLS's transfer window closing on the 14th gives them essentially a month less, because the European transfer windows have another month or so to kind of negotiate and work out how all these things work. The reason Almiron is even available is because Newcastle is looking to cut some costs, right, and change things up in their roster. They're looking to sign a new player to replace him. So there's a trickle-down effect as to how these guys become available. If you only have if you have a month less of time, the trickle-down effect has to happen quicker.
Yeah.
And so essentially, this move could have a high probability of happening if they had till September.
Yeah. So we obviously benefited from, Abada being able to be bought. Right after the European transfer window closes.
Yep.
So here we're kind of getting the exact opposite effect, where we're not benefiting from that stretch.
Yep, exactly.
So
that's it.
Awesome. Let's move on a little bit. A lot of transfer stuff going on. Like this is kind of what gets us excited right now about a transfer window. Right, when you see Charlotte being linked with top players. Right, so. Obviously, I also want to talk a little bit about how you guys would rate this transfer window, right? Okay. So if we take a look, right, say everything happens, right? You have Scott Arfield, Hamadi Diop, and Breck de Jager leave.
Yep.
And then incoming, you would have Tim Ream, Idan Toklomati, and Calvin Stengs, right? So from a 1 to 10, Sean, where would you rank this transfer window? Say those were the moves that happened.
It's an 8. It's an 8, potential to be a 9, potential to be a 7. I mean, you're bringing in extreme talent, and you're not losing any starting talent. I love Scott Arfield. This is my favorite celebration of all time. But those guys weren't getting it done. You're bringing in 2 guys who are going to start day one, and 1 guy with the potential to get it done probably in about a year. Yeah. What other window do we have that compares to it? We don't. I think that this is a great window for us.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably one of our better summer windows for sure. Likely the best summer window. The summer windows have been kind of, I would say for me, a little bit weak for Charlotte FC.
Yeah.
The bringing in Westwood during the winter window, I think is also has to be mentioned as just like a really big window for them, just in terms of what he's done overall. He's the ceiling of this club. He's shown that during the Cincinnati and Columbus games. When he's on, this team can beat some of the best clubs in MLS. So I feel like for me at this point, Westwood is the ceiling of this club. So that signing and that window has to be mentioned. But other than that, there's not a lot of competition for the other ones. They've kind of fallen short for me in terms of actually bringing in the names that they've wanted. And it seems like they've actually nailed down some of their top targets and really taken advantage of players becoming available and really making things happen. So for me, I would say a 9, a solid 9.
My guys, this is a 10 window. Yeah. From an excitement level, it's a 10. From what have we talked about? A cam?
Yeah.
We're signing a high quality cam, right? Whether he works out or not, that's not up to us now, right? But they've met that expectation. We needed a 9. We brought back a guy who scored double-digit figures for us in Karol Swiderski, who can hit that, right? Yep. We brought in a high-caliber left-footed center back, which is what Dean wanted all along. To me, it is a straight 10, right? Obviously, these signings have to work at the end of the day. From expectation levels of what we wanted, we got that, and I think a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? For me, right? You're giving a conservative 8. You're saying Ashley Westwood's the greatest player of all time? I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Well, I just say
He's my new favorite, man.
it's just also like there's always got to be room for better. There's like you got to leave a window.
Imagine
if
I do
10, that's the best they can
Imagine I give the Topbin90 curse and they all flop. That would be crazy.
The door is open for that. You've opened the door for that. You said 10 out of 10, so here we go.
10 out of 10 with our new
You're
10.
welcome, everybody.
Nice, awesome. All right, I want to get into the last nine matches of MLS, right? Obviously, my expectations and yours, we wouldn't be competing as high as we are right now.
Yeah.
A lot had to happen, and it did.
Yeah.
Right now, we're headed into the last 9 games of the season, right? With, I think Tim Ream will be able to play against New York.
Mm-hmm.
Calvin and Idan, that's going to be more difficult to get him in the New York game, right?
Yeah.
Just because of visa issues,
Yep.
all of these things, right? So let's say we count on all our players for the last 8 matches of the season. So I think that's Atlanta after New York.
Yep.
Right? So how high should Charlotte FC fans' expectations be heading into these final matches, right? Because, the squad just got a big boost.
Yeah.
Right? And so obviously I think playoffs, I don't want to say it's a guarantee, but it's pretty much a wrap. But what can this squad actually accomplish this season?
Yeah, well, I mean, 6th for sure is a lock. I would say pretty close to it. I mean, I'm usually pretty conservative on a lot of these things, but I think 6th is pretty close to a lock. I would say home game is a bit of a stretch. It depends on these next couple of games. They have 2 really good opportunities to push for 4th. The New York Red Bulls game is a 6-point game. That gets them closer to that 4th place. If they win that game, they have a really good opportunity to get 4th. It comes down to that, I would say, for 4th place. The Orlando game protects them for that 6th spot because Orlando's really the team that could push them. If Orlando wins that game against Charlotte, that's a 6-point game for them, pushes them right up on them for that 6th place spot. So those 2 games for me are 2 of the key games for this final stretch. And I mean, with New York coming up, it really doesn't come down to the new signings. It comes down to the team that's performing as they are, which is capable of playing at the level needed to get a win there. They've shown that against Columbus and Cincinnati. For me, again, it comes down to whether or not Westwood shows up the way at his highest level. If he's at their highest level, they can play with the best. It depends on whether or not he can show up the way the way they need him to, because he's the player for them. So those are the 2 games for me, and then it comes down to Westwood's performance. Really, it doesn't even come down to the new signings. They only have 9 games left. I'm not going to set an expectation for them to make the difference for them at this point. 9 games is not enough time, even for the best of the best players.
I say don't let the Leagues Cup defer you. I don't feel like we put all of our effort into
touch
that.
on the Leagues Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we put all of our effort into that. I mean, you saw it with trying different lineups, testing some guys out, getting some guys some playing time to get some eyes on them. The way we were playing before that, that's host a playoff game level. Yeah. And I think that the fans should expect to host a playoff game. And I think the team does with the move they just went to make. Yeah. They made moves to go after a cup. Yeah. Those are cup going after moves. That's a 10 period. So we're going after cup.
And I think it's really hard to measure Leagues Cup as well because I feel like they flopped in Philly, which can happen, right? Yeah. But there's not enough of a turnaround time when you have to play a team like Cruz Azul, who's cooking, right? And then we're still able to pull off 2 points, right? So to me, that's like, okay, like 1 bad game in Leagues Cup and Cup tournaments, right? You're out. Yep. Right. 100%. So, I mean,
I'm happy we got the bad game out of the way.
Yeah,
honestly,
for sure.
I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of repeat of those games under Dean Smith.
Yeah.
We're going to cook.
Yeah. To me, I think let's head into these 9-8 last games. Let's play good football, right? Yeah. Try to finish as high as you can. I'm with you. I think we'll finish 6th, maybe 5th. Yeah. But 6th, I'm fine with, right? And then blank slate. Yeah. And really, really, let's see how these matches end and how much of a push can we make given that we're in such a hard Eastern Conference, right? Because at the end of the day, you got Miami with Messi. You got Cincinnati doing well. Yeah. You've got Columbus, right, who has like a lot of when you start looking at some of these rosters in the East, you're like, damn, we got a good roster, but they got an even better roster.
It's tough. And even, I mean, I would say 5th is definitely the target. If you don't want to fall to 6th. If they hit 6th, it's a tough stretch. I mean, because then you're having to play either Columbus, Cincinnati, or Miami. And I mean, yes, we just, drew Columbus in on the road and beat Cincinnati on the road. But at the same time, you don't want to play them in a 3-game. I wouldn't want to play them in a 3-game with how they're going to focus for the playoffs and be prepared for that situation and have been in that situation before, whereas Charlotte FC have not.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't want all those intangibles to come up.
Bro, it doesn't matter anymore, dog. We got Tim Ream at the back. We got Calvin.
Yeah, yeah.
We got Swiderski, Idan. Bro, bring on anybody.
You heard it. No more analysis needed. We're winning it all.
I've got my fan blinders on.
Yeah, they're like, Jorge definitely came excited today.
I got my Charlotte FC goggles on. I'm ready to rock. I haven't been able to go to a game in so long, man. I've been a fan from the couch recently, and I'm so excited to go to the games this month and be able to be there and then see these signings get announced. And I'm just the end of the season hasn't been a time where we're like, heck yeah, very recently.
Yeah,
it is. Like now everyone's excited.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Let's touch a little bit on that, like in terms of Leagues Cup and this period, right?
Yep.
Do you find it beneficial that these players 3 weeks pretty much off, right? Is that a benefit or a negative?
I mean, I think it could go both ways. I mean, in one way, you're rested. If they had gotten signings in earlier, it could also be a benefit because they had time to kind of like almost have a mini preseason to kind of get set for the final stretch of the season. That's not going to end up being a factor for Charlotte because these signings are coming in late. I mean, Tim Ream is going to have about a week or so, right? But the rest of these guys is going to be pretty much like jumping in right at the outset. That's why I feel like having any expectations on what they could bring to the team is going to be minimal just because, I mean, they're essentially going into preseason with this team now, which means you're talking 4 games in. They're really going to be kind of up to snuff in terms of just, prepared and in sync with these guys at a minimum. So you're talking about a few games left where they're really going to make maximum impact at most.
Right.
So that's where that kind of comes up. So I feel like either way, for me, I think it's actually a con for Charlotte FC. I think they don't have the reps.
Me
in
too,
right now.
bro. Me too.
I don't think they have the reps, and they didn't have the preseason bringing in new signings. Perfect. So I think it's a con right now.
Make Brian look like the bad guy because I agree 100%.
Yeah, I'll be the devil's advocate. I think we were showing tired legs. We were showing a team that needed a little bit of a break, especially if you look at what we did in the Leagues Cup. Yeah. I think it's going to be good for these guys. Take a little break, reset. Dean Smith get in there, do his thing. And, we come back out firing.
Like he said, it can work both ways, but for me, I need these guys competitive week in, week out. Bro, that's why at the end of the season, take as long as break as you need. Yeah. Right? Yeah. These are the matches. Yeah. Get locked in for 9-10 months of a season, right? This is my, where I see things. Now, could it benefit where they're all rejuvenated, ready to go for the last 9 games? Sure, but there's also, like Brian said, right, where, too much of a break could potentially see the team start a little slow heading into these last couple of matches.
My reason for the tired legs would be, and one last point is, they had 2 of their biggest away matches of the season. That stretch was 8 days, 3 games, and 2 of them on the road in terms of Cincinnati and Columbus. So it's just going into Leagues Cup, the level of importance of those 2 games versus Leagues Cup, I'd imagine, was a pretty big drop in terms of just desire. Those 2 games were playoff games. Leagues Cup is kind of a new competition. Nobody really knows how much these players actually value it in terms of just overall desire. So I would also weigh that into consideration in terms of the tired legs. I don't know. For me, it's just having a game every week kind of keeps you kind of just rep ready.
Yeah, 100%. All right, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of subscribers' questions. First, John asked, and we'll let you lead this one. What is the state of our depth chart roster designations? Adding Tim Ream, adding Idan Toklomati, and Calvin Stengs. Obviously, we know Calvin Stengs is coming in as a DP, right? Toklomati would be a U22 signing, right? Tim Ream, I think, will be a TAM signing, right? So what does the roster look like?
Yeah, for me, I think that the back line goes, Urunen, Ream, Malanda, and Byrne along that back line. You add a little bit more experience back there. I feel bad for Privet in one way because I do think there's been a lot of times where he's actually been the stronger of the 2 center backs. He's definitely saved
He's had some clutch blocks.
Yeah. Several late game goals where, you're talking about potentially a 1 or 3 point block that he's had or a tackle that he's made. So he's put out a lot of fires. Ream is capable of doing the same thing, and he's a far higher level player at this point. So, you have to have him in the starting lineup, I think, at this juncture. I mean, I'd say Stengs obviously takes that top spot in the attacking midfield role, which Bronico was occupying. For me, and I mentioned this on Fan TV when I finally got on the show after like a year absence, I do think Bronico takes Jibril's spot. I think Diani will likely hit the bench. I know we talked about him as a Player of the Year candidate early on.
I'm sorry.
For
guys.
me, he's kind of another Topbin90 curse. I feel like he's kind of been in and out. He's gotten a lot of starts, right? He's gotten a lot of starts, but I do think for me,
for what
Bronico
Dean
is
wants,
kind of undeniable at this point.
Yeah.
With 3 different coaches, he nails the starting spot, and his work rate is higher than anyone on earth.
BB13, bro.
And it's just grind set. Right?
I think we talked about it on a show too. I was like, bro, I never count Brent Bronico out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Never been happy to be proved wrong in my life.
Yeah. And I think he has a fundraiser coming up in September too. So get tickets to that. You know, shout out Brent. He's doing some great things in the community as well. And then last question is, what players? This one's from Evan, another subscriber question. What players benefit the most, and what players are going to make way with the new signings coming in?
I mean, Privet, I think, he is going to hurt him the most. Short term, I think. Long term, I think he's a lock in this starting lineup for as long as
I think he's a long Charlotte FC long-term player, right?
Yeah,
I think it'll light a little bit of a fire in him too. This is not the first time this has happened to him.
No,
like he has been kind of looked over a lot, and he continues to push himself through. I mean, he wasn't. Yeah. No one. I mean, like I didn't know who he was when he first started a game for us. And now it's like household name for a Charlotte FC fan. That's the guy that gets things done. Yep. So, you know, I think this will just another step in his journey, and he's going to light that fire and be the best player he can be.
Yeah. In terms of that cam role, I think the guy that's going to hurt the most is probably Ben Bender, right? You know, I mean, you know, if you paid $3 million for a guy like Petkovic or $2 million, whatever it was now, right? You're expected for him to try to get some reps under Calvin. Yep. Right, and so to me, that kind of leaves him at the bottom of the barrel, unfortunately. Yep. Right, because he's been clutch for certain matches for Charlotte FC, and then I think who will benefit is our forward line, right? Yeah. Right, when you have a guy like Calvin coming in that can play you a great pass. I mean, Santi Jimenez had a lot of goals for Feyenoord, but part of that too is having a guy in the cam role like Calvin, right? You also have a ball-playing center back like Tim Ream now. That can ping you a ball, right? So, I mean, like, our forward line should be benefiting massively.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say 2 other names that probably also take a bump down is Nimfasha. We haven't seen him for a long time now, but I think, I mean,
shout out to his golazo in the freaking
U20 CONCACAF Championship.
Unfortunately, they lost it, but
yeah. And then also Brandon Cambridge, who has had a hard time working his way back up. Yep. But I'd say, I mean, this is another forward to have to compete with who's on a big transfer fee. So I think both of those guys are going to be really hard to get back into the squad at this point.
Our wings are going to find themselves with more space to know what to do with. And it's going to be who capitalizes on having all that space that gets to keep playing. Nice. I think that Vargas is going to be tested here. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. And if he doesn't start converting, someone else is going to poke their head and try to take that spot. And it's just the truth. Dean Smith goes for the players who play. And if you're not performing, he's going to find someone who will. So I think that there'll be opportunities we laid out there for him, and if they take them, then we're going to soar.
I'm excited. What we've seen Dean do with this current squad has been amazing. Yeah. Now add more quality players into the squad. That's what I love about Dean, right? Next man up mentality. Till now, and now he's got a couple of different players that he can choose from, right? Yep. You know, you've got I think it's a very exciting time to be a Charlotte FC. Finally, to be a Charlotte FC fan, right? I do also want to touch a little bit on Carolina Ascent, right? The first division women's soccer team in Charlotte, right? They'll play their first match this Saturday here in Memorial Stadium. I think the stadium can hold 9,500 people. Right now it's at 7,500 tickets sold for them. So, I mean, I love seeing that. I mean, who would have thought 5 years ago we didn't have teams. Right now we've got an MLS club. We got a first division professional women's soccer team here. Right, so I love seeing the sport continue to grow. Obviously, we're going to dedicate some of our time and effort to covering them as well, right? But I would say it starts with going to support, just how cool is it to have like local first division professional soccer in an area like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge boost. I was kind of questioning how it would work at first, just because of the NWSL team Courage having kind of like been, I mean, a really like competitive team up there in Cary. I mean,
Right.
They were back-to-back champs a couple of years ago, and I didn't know how the market would adapt to having a first-tier women's team. But it seems like so far, with the tickets they have sold, it seems like that market was there.
Yeah.
And so we'll kind of see where it goes from here. But I mean, it's props to them for making this happen. It actually seems in some ways like they're going to really push the NWSL to raise their game and get to the next level, which I think is what the women's game is missing. It seems like they haven't had enough competition at the highest level, which is what MLS did in the early days. They competed with the other leagues available, and then they ended up kind of winning out. So I think that's what the women's game probably needs, is a little bit more push and see who innovates and who drives to that next level to really make them a valued entity.
Speaking of that, it does sound like MLS may be tapping their foot into NWSL as well. So we'll see what happens there, right? Maybe a Charlotte FC ladies team in the future. Who knows, right?
Interesting.
But for now, right, it's cool because one thing I like to see is like, growing up, I always had to watch my favorite teams on TV. I was never in Liverpool or in Barcelona or in Honduras for that matter to support my team, right? Now young boys get to go to Charlotte FC match and be in that atmosphere and dream of being a soccer player like everyone does, right? But also I think it's cool that little girls now get that same opportunity with a team like Carolina Ascent. A lot of the players that are part of this squad have Charlotte roots as well, North Carolina roots. So it's just cool seeing stuff like that.
Dude, their marketing team's been working overtime. I can't leave my house without seeing an Ascent sticker on a car.
Nice.
It's true. Try driving somewhere in Charlotte. You'll see them everywhere. I'm pumped. I think it's going to be awesome. I will say, I'm running out of bandwidth to support teams. There are so many cool teams in this area now, and being from Detroit, all my teams, same thing. I've never been able to watch them, and I was so excited when we got Charlotte FC because I finally had a team in my town.
Yeah.
And it's another team in my town, and I'm really looking forward to catching some games.
Nice, awesome. So I just wanted to give kind of a quick shout out to them, right? Just because one of the things we're all about soccer at Topbin90, right? And we want to continue to help the sport grow in the Carolinas, right? And so finally, just touching on Charlotte, just your excitement level, bro, going into these last couple of matches. Y'all already know I'm hyped.
Yeah. I mean, I went into the season cautiously optimistic. I mean, I think at this point, cross out cautiously. I mean, it's definitely optimistic. You're optimistic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, they've hit 6.
We go and lose 9 in a row.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
Yeah, we just doubled the top 90 first. Right here live. But yeah, we're at 6th, right? Which is well ahead of, I'd say, preseason expectations at this point.
Yes.
And then at this point, they've made some big signings. So 2025 for me, circle that as like a really, really monumental season.
MLS Cup champs.
I mean, they should be competing for, at the highest level, right? You need a full season really to kind of, with all of these new signings and kind of building this squad together. 2025 for me is like when, the rubber meets the road on whether or not this team is good enough to really push for silverware. But at the same time, 2024 is the start to see that blossoming. Yeah. And I think optimism should be at an all-time high for that.
Sean, last 2 years of Charlotte FC, we've gone into the last couple of games crawling up the table, right? Versus this year, we're looking and we have room for error, right? So, it's kind of a different feeling in that aspect as well.
We're talking about hosting a playoff game. Yeah. Playoffs.
Yeah.
That's
playoffs.
Yeah. I came into this season honestly pretty burnt out on Charlotte FC. I'd done so much stuff with supporters groups and the council and all that stuff, and I came into the season looking forward to just kind of being a fan and relaxing. And the team decided that that wasn't going to happen, and that I was going to be wanting to be at every single game, and that there'd be no letdown, and that we'd have a coach that changed the whole vibe of this team and put us with a captain who's driving us straight forward. I've never been more excited to be a Charlotte FC fan. This is going to be a really fun end of the year. I'm really looking forward to it.
Love it. Zoran?
Cooking.
Cook, bro. With that said, Sean, where can we find you at, my man?
Instagram, Sean Gartley. Just look for me commenting on all of Jorge's stuff.
Love it. Mr. Brian?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Malware Media, and you can also find all my written content at Topbin90.com.
Yeah, you've been cooking a lot of great articles recently too, so we appreciate you for that. You guys know Jorge Gonzalez, Topbin90, bringing you the latest in all Charlotte soccer sports. Got